Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty, well-preserved body, but rather to skidding broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." Hunter S. Thompson. You have all heard the stories about Aokigahara Forest, Japan, infamously known as the Suicide Forest. Well, this is a story not about that haunting place, but of another. The story takes place in Bangkok, Thailand. It occurs in a block of old, run-down suites. I don't know if you are aware, the city is starting to get a bit of an infamous reputation for its suicides. Mostly, they seem to be foreigners who just want to go out and die alone in dark despair. I will tell you a bit about myself and what predicament led me to this day. My name is James Hanbury Brown. I am middle-aged. My profession was a doctor. I say a doctor as in the last year I have been struck off. It was only a matter of time with what I was doing, so it was not unexpected. It has been the catalyst for my entire life's demise. My wife can't get the drugs she desires off me, and has left. With her, the kids have gone, and I doted on them. The worst thing is, they no longer live with either of us. They were put into care. Now, I am living on little funds, and I think, for me, life is lost. To rekindle my desire for life, I figured a fling may be the elixir I need. I hooked up with a girl on the net, and I got a good fare on a flight to Bangkok, and off I went to Thailand. I only purchased a single, as I had no real plans to resurface again back in the UK. I have heard about this city, and the vices it offers, so I thought I knew what to expect. Over the years, I have travelled a lot, so I figured it's a situation I could manage. How wrong could I be? The truth couldn't have been much further. Shafts of red speared the dawn sky, pink and bloody. I yawned and stretched out. The bed was sweaty, and the linen clung to my body. I squirmed to get comfy again, pulling the sheets into a tangle. It was then I felt something soft and cold. I rolled over and studied a sleeping girl next to me. A knowing smirk came across my face. I rubbed my face and traced my fingers through my hair. Quietly, I slipped out of bed and wandered naked to the balcony. In Bangkok, when you look over the city, it's not so much as a mist you get. It's smog. I shook my leg and tried to kick free the loose bedding that had wrapped itself around it. I looked around and thought to myself, the room was like an aftermath of some battle royale. I smoked a cigarette, taking in the views of the city. The room was humid and stuffy, and the clinging animal smells of the girl were all over me. I flicked half an inch of ash onto the balcony below, and turned to go back to bed. What happened next was the freakiest thing. I stopped dead. There was no sign of the girl. She had gone like an apparition. I didn't know how to process this. I just put it to my mind playing tricks on me. I had been a doctor. I liked things in boxes. This scene did not sit right with me at all. To keep my mind busy, I tidied the room. I picked up an old Bangkok Post that had been thrown under the curtains and took a quick look. The paper was from the week I arrived in Bangkok. Just beyond the first page, there were some articles next to an ad for the Shangri-La Hotel. Well, you know when you glance at something, look away, and swiftly look back, like you have seen something jumping out of the print. A particular article caught my eye. I started to read the story. It was quite depressing, especially near the end. A ripple crossed the black and white pages as my hands wavered, breaking into a violent shake. When I reveal to you what was written, you will understand my dread. There had been a suicide in this hotel, and it seemed, by what it said in the paper, it was not the first. They painted a very grim picture of this establishment. One room in particular, number 373. I knew I was in the 300s, but was not sure if it was that room. I became very anxious. My stomach started to churn. I became very tense. A sense of dread came over me. I slowly looked over towards the door, and sure enough, the number 373 was embossed in it. The girl who committed suicide, who I believed to be the apparition, was found here. From what I read, I can only summarize that this poor girl died in the most diabolical way. I can only tell you what I read in the article, but it frightened me to the core. The girl had been found after a week. It seems the maid had been ill, and no replacement had been provided. The report, according to the Post, said the body was found decaying in the bathroom, an electrical cord wrapped around her neck. It seems she had stood on a stool and had attached the cable on a short leash to the showerhead. It was a common practice, so I have read. The flesh had been pulled away now, at the neck. She lay slumped in her excrement. The photo showed an image of her, head drooping low and tongue hanging out. Seems her last moment, she was struggling to keep life, and died, gagging for her breath. Such a shame. She looked such a beautiful girl in the photo of her with her family below. Now you may wonder why a girl would end her life in such a tragic way. The further I read down into the column, the more her despair was revealed. Why does anyone come to room 373? There are lots of places like this, in every city in the world. She was estranged to her parents, and her husband was having an affair. Her 2 children had been put into care. It seems substance abuse was her downfall, and this is why the tragic event ensued. I could only feel remorse for such a lost soul. The hotel had got me curious. I thought I'd better do some research to see with what I was dealing. I went to my bag and broke out my laptop and started to clicker-clacker on the keys. Things about the hotel came up that surprised me. It wasn't one of the new breed of hotels. Far from it. It had been built in the 70s. The building standards and health and safety are not the greatest nowadays. Go back 40 years, and you're getting the picture. The number of workers killed on site here was mind-boggling. That, and the accidents since the time the premises opened its doors, and now with the spate of suicides rising in the last handful of years, this hotel is surely one of death. So is it any wonder I would see such apparitions? My only worry is that it is tainting me in some dark way. This room has a black presence. I can't seem to leave it, and it's drawing me to places I don't want to visit. I'm getting the most unnerving feelings. I feel demented and unhinged in the daytime, but if truth be told, it's the night I dread the most, as I know not what I will see. The day passed. I stumbled around the room in a drunken stupor. I fall over, knocking tables everywhere, still clinging to my bottle of Jack. Is this how I am to end my days? Each day merging into another drunken squalor? Can this be it until the day I die? Drinking myself until I pass out, ending my days like the rest of them. For this is the curse of room 373, and I fear It has taken a hold. Later that evening, I awoke. I saw the city lights dancing on my walls. The nightlife was abundant in this area, near the Nana Plaza. Such a cacophony of life you would never hear. I felt I should be out in the midst of the action. If I could only tear myself from room 373. The only food I had left was in the refrigerator, which hummed loudly. Noodles had been my staple diet for the week. They are the only thing I could keep down. I rubbed my grizzled, unshaven chin as I lay on the bed. I studied the room. Damp, dark patches to dwell in the corners. Around the lamp fitting, there were some wet-looking, mouldy spots, and the furniture was in tatters. Why did I come here? I don't think it's a conscious decision. No one chooses this place. They are pulled towards it. That I understand now, and I am resigned to the fact this is where my life will end. So with the night came the torment. I sat in the tattered chair, fingers digging deep into the arms, staring into space. The bare light bulb buzzed and began to flicker spasmodically. After a while, the light bulb popped, and I was left in the dark. I opened the curtains to let in the light from the street, then resumed my spot on the retro fabric armchair. I clutched at the bottle of Jack that lay on the side next to me. I took a swig from the bottle. The tension was building. My eyes darted around the room in fear. With every sound in the shadows, my eyes leaped and scratched. It was then I saw another apparition. It was different from the one I had seen previously. This time, the girl I felt to be angry. Over in the corner, near a set of diapilated drawers, knelt a girl. She was scratching at the carpet like an animal. The figure turned its head and looked at me. Seemed I was now looking into pure evil, the depth of depravity. The girl chuttered and slithered and clawed at the carpet. She was the palest of things, dressed only in a ravaged white nightgown. Long black scrawny hair fell over her shoulders. There was a putrid smell coming from the corner where she was. When the apparition vanished, I tentatively made my way to the cupboards where she'd been scratching. Do the extremities of evil have no bounds? When I pulled back the shredded carpet, what I found was quite shocking to me. I found what I believed to be a Dybbuk box, set under the floor. I decided I would open it. Why did the apparition want it so badly? I had to find out. The box was quite old. The signature on its tarnished base led me to believe it was from the Holocaust. I picked it up. It was finely carved, and of excellent craftsmanship. Intrepidly, I opened the lid, and in it were lots of cassettes. Every tape box had a name on, the last being the one of the girl who committed suicide here not long ago. It intrigued me, but I got the most foreboding feeling, especially when I read the letters and documents in the box. It seems 40 years ago a man came to this place, a most evil person from all accounts. His name was Aldous Crowley, a man who dabbled in the black arts. He was a member of some of the most infamous cults in the world, the Order of the Crimson Dawn being just one. However, he had been dispelled by them and ended his life travelling from one cesspit to another. I think this to be his final resting place. I think he sold his soul to the devil, the price being he promised to deliver people to the Dark Master. What happened to him is a mystery. Maybe all will be revealed. With this in mind, I got the small tape machine out of the Dybbuk box. It must have been put in for people to record themselves, or for sick individuals to listen. I placed the box on the G-plan style coffee table and pressed play. The real meaning of the recordings were to become evident to me very soon. The first cassette was Aldous Crowley. He spoke in a bitter tone as he talked about his dispelling out of the Crimson Dawn.
I am fully regretting informing the world about my recent dispelling from the Crimson Dawn. I always thought I did the best any man could, but it seems my thirst for the dark is too strong for their palates.
There was a pause.
I now believe them to be a weak society, and I will continue my work in the dark realms elsewhere, and damn them all to hell. I spit on their putrid souls.
The recording goes on to tell of how he summoned Satan in this very room and had made a deal with him. In return for everlasting life and glory, he would deliver 13 souls to the devil. Now, I understand what all the recordings were. He needed 13 people to commit a mortal sin of something, and admit it on the tapes. I started the first tape. The tape dated back to the early 70s, and a man spoke on it, how he was the developer of the hotel, and had done terrible things. He went on to describe the shortcuts he had made in search of making money. It was pure avarice, the man said, and it cost people their lives. He said he skimped on health and safety and paid them a pittance. The shame he felt now was intolerable. He, like the rest, could not put the fingers on what drew him to room 373, but they all had one thing in common. They all wanted to have their end of days.
I am at the end of my tether. I cannot take it anymore. I know I have done wrong, and for that, I must pay.
Then there was a silence, a pause, and a rattle. The click of a plastic cap.
This is my end now. I am truly sorry for what I have done.
And with that, the tape ends. John Jameson committed suicide, and it was entered as a side note on the cassette box. The tapes go on in a similar vein. Mostly men ending their lives for the wrongs they have done. I spent hours listening to everyone. There were 2 murderers, and 2 women on the list. The saddest thing was, there was a child. She died at her mother's hand, just before her suicide. The last was the girl from the other week, who committed the awful deed. I counted 12 incidents, and the pact explicitly states 13. I turned the box upside down, but one tape was missing. Just out of curiosity, I listened to the 12th tape. I wanted to know how the girl died from her point of view. The girl spoke in terror of how the man in the corner was going to make her commit suicide. The girl was drawn to the room, with no intention of leaving, like so many others. It seems the young lady had tried to fight the urges. She spoke of the man with eyes from hell, seducing her into death. She was speaking lucid enough. Who was the man? And what had she done? The tape never reveals who the man is. She just depicts him as a reaper sort of figure. It's a haunting recording, and it made a traumatic listen. She said in a quivering voice,
My name is Jane Stockton. I'm in room 373 now, and this is my final statement. I have beside me a leash.
The girl's deep, mournful sighs. She starts to weep.
I don't know if I can go through with this.
Deep breathing is heard in the background.
You must. I want your soul.
A voice bellows.
I need your soul. Before the devil squeals, I will have it.
Then there is a shuffling, and a scream, and the sound of heavy footsteps and a dragging noise. Then there are fainter screams, and a bang of a door, and the sounds of a struggle. Everything goes quiet before a throttling and choking sound, and the girl sputters and coughs, and then a dead thud. The only sound after that is a hateful, disdained voice.
Die, whore.
Then all you hear is the footsteps approach the cassette, deep breathing, and then the tape is stopped. So now I know the girl was not alone when she died. She had been terrorized into it, not delivered freely to her death. I wondered, was this against the pact rules? Did the devil want souls to kill themselves freely? Is that why there is no tape number 13? Had the agreement been broken and Aldous Crowley forfeited? Had he been delivered into the devil's heinous vice? My head was spinning. So many permutations on what could happen. But the thing I kept coming back to was why I am here. Sure, my life was in tatters. I won't say the self-destruction path had not crossed my mind, because it had. The night dwindled, and the cacophony from the Nana Plaza seemed very tame tonight. The whole atmosphere was subdued around this place. It was then I went to the bathroom to freshen up. I was tired out. My face was drawn. The room seemed to drain me. There was a loud knock 3 times, and I stood still in silence. I was not expecting anyone. The deep husky voice said, "I know you're in there," and hammered again. For whatever reason, I relented. I opened the door, and a big man brashly made his way past me. He wore a black hat, made his way into the living area, and sat down in my chair. I followed through and sat on the bed. He took off his hat and discarded it casually into the corner of the room where the carpet was ripped up. I stared at the balding man, waiting for him to introduce himself. He'd walked in like he owned the place. He sighed. "Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Aldous Crowley." Then he went on to tell me that he wanted something from me. I listened to the man's hypnotic voice. "Now, Mr. James Hanbury Brown, you, sir, are my number 13. He then reached into his black jacket, past the red silk lining, and got a tape from his pocket. In a non-Ciliate fashion, he tossed it onto the coffee table. I looked at the man in his own stare and said, "What am I supposed to do with that?" The man said, "Let's not be naive. You know what I want." He leaned towards me, a face like thunder, and slammed his fist down, smashing the coffee table. "You, sir, are going to make that tape for me before your death. You will make it all right with the devil again for me. It is just the one more I need." This vile man coughed and spluttered into his handkerchief. In it was dark blood. The man looked at me and put his hand back in his pocket sharply. I said, "You're dying, aren't you?" Aldous Crowley spoke. "It is true. He has cursed me. If I don't get the 13th soul, soon I will die a horrible death." I realized I was the one with the power now, and spoke deliberately. "And what if I was to say no to you?" I grinned, feeling the power and malicious intent growing inside of me. I smouldered and said, "I don't care if you rot in hell. For what you have done to these people, you deserve nothing less." I leaned forward, looking the man in the eye. "I am in control now." The man said, "You know not what you are getting into," and grinned. The man started to laugh until he coughed again. "Lucifer is the only winner here. Whatever you do, he wins." He proceeded to lecture me on the ins and outs of his secret world. His story was intriguing, yet sinister, and was full of deceit and tangled webs. In the midst of his story, he got to the situation at hand, and the choices we both had. He said, "So now you understand why none of us can win." There was a silence. "It's only the Dark One who wins this game." The options I had were bleak at best, but I had to make a decision soon. Aldous Crowley spoke. James, I must push you. Time is not on my side. He picked up the tape recorder out of the smashed glass and shuffled to get the cassette from under the chair. He placed the tape in the machine and caught my eye and gestured impatiently. The whole thing was so surreal. I'm sitting here with this tainted man who is doing the devil's bidding. My options are either sign my life over to him or sell my soul to the devil. I can't believe this is real. I need a straight drink. I'll have one too, replied the man. Wash down the blood. We sat sipping the bourbon before I made my decision. Then, after some deliberation, I spoke. I said, I'll do the recording, and you will get your 13th soul. Aldous Crowley smiled. You have made the right decision. Free your mind of torment now. He pressed on the old cassette machine. It whirled, and I went on to talk about who I was. I stated my name and profession. I told the tape of my feelings of self-destruction and what had brought me to that mindset. It seemed to free up a lot of anxiety inside of me, talking like this. But this was all wrong. I picked a large shard of glass from the floor and raised it to my throat. The man's eyes beamed excitedly, and he said gleefully, Yes, do it now. I dropped the glass, and the firmness took hold of me, and I said, No, I will not do your bidding. He raged, kicking the furniture around, and then you will go to hell as the devil's servant. My resort was, as will you. What happened next? You will never believe me. There was a terrible crash. A crescent ray grew to immense proportions and then flew downwards. Aldous Crowley vanished in an incendiary ball. The only thing left of him were charred lines of his body, and there, now before me, floating in the corner, was the devil himself. He spoke deep and echoey.
So you have rebuked the offer of being Aldous Crowley's 13th soul?
I was terrified, and words would not come out of my mouth. The devil spoke smoothly. You know, that means you are mine now. I just nodded. The fiery figure went on to say, I will offer you the same deal I offered dear old Aldous. 13 souls for everlasting glory beside me. He ran his finger over his horns and rubbed his scaly black skin. You have seen what happens to those who forfeit. He lunged closer to me, his pointy forked tongue hissing. Let that be the motivation to you, James. He then passed me a quill and some scriptures, told me to cut my palm with the shard of glass, and he said, This needs to be signed in blood. I'm sorry, we have to do it the old-fashioned way. Hell is not big in the IT department. He roared with laughter. I nervously smiled. He patted my back. His tri-pronged claw hand burnt my shoulder. He roared with laughter again. Oops. I'm a bit hot-handed. I scrawled my signature in blood hastily. Satan changed tone. He cracked his cat-of-nine-tails fire-branding whip and said,
Don't ever cross me, James, or you will fry for the rest of eternity.
My quivering voice said, No, sir. The devil replied,
We are very informal down here. No need for that.
With that, he was gone. What is the moral of this story? If there is one, I guess it's simple. Always live life to its most, and never wish life away, even when times are hard. One thing for sure though, there will always be another soul collector out there. Make sure you don't end up on his list. Sleep. Those little slices of death. How I loathe them. Edgar Allan Poe.